The Federal Reserve just told the world it might raise interest rates, and gold spiked more than 3.5% the same day. Silver did even better. If you only read the headline, none of that makes sense. Higher rates are supposed to be bad for metals that pay you nothing to hold them. So either the market missed the memo, or there's a second story happening underneath the first one that almost nobody's talking about. That's what we're digging into today. If you're interested in money, investing, gold, silver, and protecting what you've built from a system that keeps finding new ways to devalue the dollar, this is exactly the kind of story we break down every week here at Money Insiders. Hit subscribe and tap that like button, because understanding moments like this one is the difference between reacting to the news and actually seeing it coming. Here's what we know for certain. On Wednesday, August 19th, the Federal Reserve released the minutes from its July 28th and 29th policy meeting. At that meeting, the Fed voted to hold interest rates steady in a range of 3.50 to 3.75%. But it wasn't a clean vote. 3 regional Fed presidents, Lori Logan, Beth Hammack, and Neil Kashkari, dissented. They wanted a quarter-point hike instead. 3 dissents from a Federal Reserve policy vote is rare. It tells you there's real disagreement inside the building, not just polite debate. The minutes confirm that disagreement ran deeper than 3 votes. According to the document, several officials said price pressures looked broad-based, and a number of participants believed further policy tightening would likely be needed if inflation didn't come down. That is about as hawkish as a Fed document gets, without an actual rate hike attached to it. Hawkish, in plain English, means the Fed is leaning toward tighter money, higher borrowing costs, and less patience with inflation. It's the opposite of dovish, which means leaning toward cutting rates and supporting growth. So here's the puzzle. A hawkish signal from the most powerful central bank on earth is supposed to push gold and silver down. Higher rates make it more attractive to hold cash or bonds instead of a metal that just sits there. That relationship has held for decades. And yet on the very day those hawkish minutes came out, gold didn't fall. It surged toward $4,500 an ounce, its highest level since early June. Silver did the same thing, breaking out toward a 2-month high above 67 hours. Something else was pulling harder than the hawkish minutes were pushing. To understand what that something else was, you have to rewind a few days, because the setup for this move didn't start on Wednesday. It started with bond yields, climbing to levels the market hadn't seen in almost 2 decades. On Tuesday, the yield on the 30-year Treasury bond touched its highest point since 2007, back during the financial crisis. That's a significant marker. Since July, yields across the board had been grinding higher, driven largely by rising energy prices tied to the ongoing conflict in the Middle East, which pushed inflation expectations up. Higher expected inflation usually means investors demand a higher yield to lend the government money for 30 years. That's exactly what was happening. Now here's the detail that actually explains the gold and silver move, and it has almost nothing to do with the Fed. On the same day the minutes were released, the U.S. Treasury Department announced it would double the size of its buyback program for longer-dated government bonds. A Treasury buyback means the government goes into the market and repurchases some of its own outstanding debt. When the Treasury buys more bonds, it adds demand for those bonds. And when demand for a bond goes up, its price goes up and its yield goes down. That's just how bond math works. And the effect was immediate. The 30-year yield, which had just hit a nearly 2-decade high, dropped more than 8 basis points to around 5.20%. The 10-year yield fell close to 5 basis points, down to roughly 4.66%. One source cited by Bloomberg put it bluntly, saying the administration needed a win, and containing long-term Treasury rates artificially might be exactly that. Whether or not that characterization is fair, the market reaction was real. The U.S. dollar index dropped about 0.8%, sliding toward a 7-week low. And that's the mechanism. Gold and silver are priced in dollars, and they compete with bonds for a safe place to park money. When yields fall and the dollar weakens, both of those changes make gold and silver relatively more attractive, even if the reason yields fell had nothing to do with inflation cooling or the Fed turning friendlier. In this case, the yields fell because of a debt management decision, not a monetary policy decision. The Fed was saying rates might need to go up. The Treasury, on the very same day, was taking an action that pushed long-term borrowing costs down. 2 different parts of the U.S. government were effectively pulling in opposite directions, And on Wednesday, the Treasury's move won. That raises an important question for anyone watching this. If a bond buyback can override a hawkish Fed signal in a single trading session, how much should you actually trust the headline reaction to any one piece of news? The honest answer is that markets are rarely responding to just one thing at a time. Wednesday had at least three forces in motion together: the hawkish minutes, the yield-crushing buyback announcement, and a Middle East conflict that had already been pushing energy prices and inflation fears higher for weeks. Traders were also digesting the expiration of a temporary ceasefire arrangement between the US and Iran, which added fresh uncertainty to an already jumpy market. Gold tends to catch a bid during geopolitical stress, regardless of what the Fed is doing. Here's where the story gets more layered, because gold and silver didn't move in perfect lockstep. By Thursday morning, gold had actually eased back slightly from its Wednesday highs, with some of the hawkish minutes finally getting priced in as the initial yield shock faded. Silver, on the other hand, kept climbing, pushing to a fresh 2-month high near 67.30. One financial outlet framed it as silver showing, in their words, sheer strength despite the same hawkish backdrop that was starting to weigh on gold. That's not a small detail, it's a clue. Gold and silver are often treated as the same trade, but they're not identical assets. Gold is almost entirely a monetary and safe haven metal. People in central banks hold it to protect against currency weakness and uncertainty. Silver carries that same monetary appeal, but roughly half of global silver demand comes from industrial use, things like electronics, solar panels, and increasingly the build-out of AI data centers and the broader electrification of the economy. When silver outperforms gold the way it did into Thursday, it can be a signal that investors aren't just seeking safety, they're also betting on continued industrial demand. Notably, the July FOMC dissenters specifically flagged concern that the ongoing AI investment boom, alongside supply shocks, could keep inflation entrenched. If that investment boom is also quietly reinforcing silver's industrial demand story, you have two different forces, both pointing the same direction for the white metal. That's worth watching, not as a guarantee, but as a pattern. There's a bigger, slower story running underneath all of this daily noise, and it's the one that explains why gold was already trading near record territory before any of this week's headlines hit. As of late January, gold's price was up more than 95% over the prior 12 months. That is an extraordinary move for an asset that's supposed to be boring. Some of that has come from central banks themselves. Data through the second quarter of this year showed central banks recording their strongest quarterly gold buying on record. China's central bank, the People's Bank of China, has been a major part of that trend, extending a gold buying streak that has now run for roughly 20 consecutive months, according to reporting on its reserve additions. In one recent month alone, it added just under 15 tons to its reserves, its largest single-month purchase in nearly 3 years. Why does the central bank buy that much gold? It's a long-term reserve decision, not a reaction to any single week's Fed minutes. Countries that are less confident in holding US dollar-denominated assets as their primary reserve, for whatever mix of economic or geopolitical reasons, tend to diversify into gold because it isn't anyone else's liability. It doesn't depend on the promise of a government to pay you back. When you see that kind of buying continue for nearly 2 years straight, through periods when gold was expensive and periods when it dipped, it tells you this isn't opportunistic trading. It's policy. And policy-driven demand tends to put a floor under prices in a way that day-to-day trader sentiment doesn't. So now we have two stories running at once. There's the short-term story, where a hawkish Fed and a market-friendly Treasury buyback collided on the same afternoon, and the buyback won, at least for one session. And there's the long-term story, where structural demand from central banks, persistent inflation concerns, and a market that no longer fully trusts any single data point has kept gold and silver in a multi-year uptrend regardless of what any individual Fed meeting says. Let's bring this back to why any of this actually matters if you're not a bond trader or a hedge fund manager. If you have a savings account, a 401k, or you're planning for retirement, the tug of war between the Fed and the bond market shows up in your life in very concrete ways. When Treasury yields move, mortgage rates tend to follow with a lag, because many mortgage rates are priced off the 10-year yield. A drop like the one we saw this week, if it holds, could modestly ease borrowing costs for anyone shopping for a home or refinancing. But if the Fed follows through on the hawkish tone in these minutes and actually raises rates in the months ahead, credit card rates, auto loans, and business borrowing costs could tick back up, even if long-term Treasury yields stay relatively contained because of buybacks. Those two forces don't have to move together, and that disconnect is exactly what we're watching play out right now. For savers, a genuinely higher for longer rate environment isn't all bad news. It has meant better yields on savings accounts, CDs, and money market funds than most people got used to in the years after the financial crisis. But it also means that if inflation doesn't fully cooperate, the real return on that cash, meaning what you earn after subtracting inflation, can still lag behind what you need to preserve your purchasing power over time. That's part of why gold and silver have found renewed interest from everyday investors and not just institutions. They're not trying to time next week's Fed headline. They're trying to protect long-term buying power against a monetary and fiscal picture that includes trillion-dollar annual interest costs on the national debt and a Treasury that is now actively intervening in bond markets to manage its own borrowing costs. None of this means gold and silver are guaranteed to keep climbing. It's worth being honest about the other side of the ledger. Bank of America, back on July 8th, actually cut its average 2026 gold price forecast by 14%, down to $4,160 an ounce, specifically citing a more hawkish Federal Reserve outlook at the time. Interestingly, that same research note kept the bank's long-term target of $6,000 an ounce intact, suggesting the near-term hawkish risk and the long-term structural bull case are two separate questions with two separate answers. JP Morgan's commodities team, meanwhile, has pointed to a Q4 2026 gold target around $4,500, a level that gold has now essentially reached months ahead of schedule, while also flagging some softening in physical demand out of China and India, even as prices rise. That's a real tension worth sitting with. Investment demand pushing prices up, while some traditional physical buyers pull back because gold has simply gotten expensive. So what happens from here genuinely depends on which force wins the next round. If upcoming inflation data, including the core PCE reading due later this month, comes in hotter than expected, the hawkish case in these minutes gains real weight, Treasury yield relief or not, and that could pressure both metals as September rate hike odds climb back up. As of the most recent tracking, markets had actually been leaning toward the Fed holding rates steady in September, with the probability of a hold rising to around 65% after softer inflation. And retail sales data came in following the July meeting, a shift from roughly even odds just a few weeks earlier. If that data keeps softening, the hawkish tilt in these minutes may age quickly, and further Treasury buybacks or a dovish turn from Fed Chair Kevin Warsh at the upcoming Jackson Hole Symposium later this month could keep gold and silver supported for a very different reason than what we saw this week. On the other hand, if inflation proves stickier, especially with energy prices elevated from the Middle East situation and structural pressures like the AI investment boom that the Fed's own dissenters pointed to, the case for higher rates could get stronger, and that combination could eventually catch up with metals prices even if buybacks keep providing short-term relief. That's the honest picture. There is no guarantee either way. What the evidence actually shows is that Wednesday's gold and silver surge wasn't really a referendum on whether the Fed is hawkish. The Fed's minutes made the hawkish case about as clearly as it's been made all year. Gold and silver rallied anyway because a separate, less discussed lever, Treasury debt management, pulled yields down hard enough to overwhelm that signal for one session, layered on top of a longer, slower story about central banks quietly diversifying away from the dollar for reasons that have nothing to do with any single week's headlines. If you take one thing away from this, let it be this. The next time you see a headline that says the Fed did one thing and the market did the opposite, don't assume the market is irrational. Assume there's a second story you haven't been told yet and go find it. That habit alone will put you ahead of most people trying to make sense of gold, silver, and the economy right now. If you learned something new today, make sure to subscribe to Money Insiders and like this video. More powerful financial insights are coming next. This video is AI generated.